to Snap Publishing, where we discuss the secrets of Edward Lee Scanlon's Coral Castle and the connection of that to the periodic table and to the zodiac and to the DNA double helix. All right, welcome back. I'm going to pick up where I left off. And I was talking about how I had to reverse engineer once I learned what the 3, 6, and 9 were, and how hydrogen has the 3 isotopes and how they played into the biblical narrative. And I started piecing together what Nikola Tesla was trying to hint. He was throwing out hints to the people, saying, hey, the key to this is 963. It's been there the whole time. And all your masters back in the day, Gauss, Maxwell, when they died, their staff were told, go in and get all their stuff and hide it. Don't publish it. Because you believe your college university is built on strictly science. Baloney. Hogwash. They were starting to connect the dots that, hey, the Bible equals the periodic table. Hello? People in the Bible, events in the Bible are elements. They are the forces. They are pi and phi. Guy's name was Pyram. He was a king. Pyram. Ramming pie. Come on, guys. Did you miss that? Piece of pie, right? You got the wedge getting rammed. Sound familiar? That's pi, and phi is its opposite. And these are found in the biblical narrative. Read the Bible. They're all in there. And in the 1800s, when they started messing with electromagnetism and the ball started rolling technologically, the Satanists, the Luciferians, whose sacred cow, the number one protect at all costs beliefs, is that hydrogen is Lucifer. Lucifer is hydrogen. They were like, hey, we got to do damage control here, man. This is going to fly off the handle, and pretty soon the church is going to get huge. They're going to come to the knowledge of what they actually believe. There's going to be a connection between science and spirituality. The two halves of their brain, the rational and the irrational, the rational, irrational, and imaginary, are all going to start connecting. And we don't want that. We need sheeple, bro. I can tell you a very interesting story about my dad's cousin married a guy, grew up in the bad part of the city. All his friends went to jail for murder, bank robberies. It was the bank robbery capital of the world at the time, Charlestown, Massachusetts. I worked with an old timer from there. I said, hey, I only know one guy from Charlestown. Do you know this guy? And I had known the guy from Charlestown for a long time. I worked with him for 10 years before I said, hey, do you know so-and-so? And he goes, how in the world do you know him? And I said, well, my dad's cousin married him. And he goes, his older brother's my best friend. We're like brothers. This guy I'm talking about, they realized these guys are all going to end up in jail for life. So they pulled him out. Somebody recognized this guy's different than the others. He's smart. And his older brother said, yeah, he is. You need to get him out of here because we're all criminals, but there's hope for him. He was tested in one of the Ivy League schools here in Boston. Won't mention the name. And they realized he's a genius. His tests were off the charts. They put him into a special program through the Catholic Church, which is extremely powerful here in the city. I call it the Catholic Mafia. He was pulled aside and mentored through the church. Others in that same program I grew up with a family across the street from me, and I had cousins that were a couple blocks away. Both fathers were Boston police. The neighbor to the cousins had this same program. You're going to know what I'm talking about in a minute. And I always said about the kid to the cousin, I said, hey, what's up with that dude? And they said he was a genius and he was given a full scholarship to this certain Ivy League school. And they put him through a battery of tests and he went nuts. Sound familiar? Teddy Kaczynski? Like I say, you think these are your buddies. Hey, look, they're giving me a chance in life, a leg up. They're going to give me a free scholarship. I'm going to Disney World. Guess again. They're looking for guinea pigs. These are my buddies, right? No. I saw this stuff all around me. And when you get old, like I say, when you finally get a life, you become that Bruce Springsteen or that Robbie Krieger. You're tiptoeing through the tulips. You reflect back on things you saw as a youth and you went, wow, that's kind of weird, but I'm going to put that in the back burner. That's back here somewhere. Never going to forget that. I'm like, wait a minute, this kid who's really well-to-do, he was what you would call lace curtain Irish. He had it made. But he blew all his circuits because they messed with him. It was part of what he had to do to keep that scholarship. And that pressure, he couldn't take it. And all those tests that they were giving him, that they weren't giving those rich kids, they were given to the people down below, down here on the pyramid. Their kids are up here. You're not part of that club. Like I say, George Carlin said, over here and over here, yeah, those are elite people. You and me aren't part of that. Never gonna be either. They will never accept you. Wake up, man. I'm part of a Satanist organization. No, you're not. You're cannon fodder for the people that are over there on the left. You're a sucker. So, I was very lucky, and I realized, like Billy Waugh said, I had something to say at my level. I found a fatal flaw, and I'm exploiting it. And I'm going to beat people over and over and over the head with this until it finally, that rock, David sunk into Goliath's skull. By the way, if you ever see the depiction of the Great Pyramid in my temple graphic, I got the X one way to the right and the equal sign to the left. That's the northern shaft, southern shaft, but I got them facing east and west. That actually spins. It's the sword from the Garden of Need or the Garden of Eden that after Adam and Eve sinned, God put the cherub in the center of the garden to keep the way of the tree of life. That's what that's talking about. Do you know what that actually means? Part of what that's saying is God put these Satanists in the way to keep the tree of life. That tree of life is the thing you're searching for in your life. It's not the tree of the, what do you call it, Axis Mundi of all things. I'm talking about the one in your life that Bruce Springsteen and Robbie Krieger were talking about. Your tree of life. Forget about everybody else. All these other forces exist to prevent you from finding you. And who put that there? Oh, Satan put that there, man. That's what the church teaches you. No. Stop making excuses for God. Be like Job. Have a pair. Call it like you see it. And say, hey, just like Joseph said, Joseph's one of the greatest people in the Bible. He's in my top 3. He said, hey, all you scumbag brothers of mine meant all this for my ill will. to my detriment. But God did it for the preservation of life. Does that get God off the hook? Not in my book. That's why you got to stay prayed up. Because to get to this point, I was pulled from the jaws of death. Most of the time from God, I'm going to say 1 or 2 times, I had to do it myself. I got God so mad, God was done with me. Same thing with Nebuchadnezzar. Just put him in a field on all fours, eating grass like an ox. Cut off. Just cut him off. You don't think God can get that cold? I got news for you. The devil is scared shit of God. The devil, when the devil's in the presence of God, it's like a dog shitting razor blades. These Satanists don't understand that. God will out-devil the devil any day. Once you realize that, God ain't nobody's buddy. No one's. You have to understand the way the Bible is written. Like when Jonathan had javelins thrown at him, that's like Zeus throwing lightning bolts, or Poseidon throwing the trident. Jonathan having to dodge, that's Father, Son, Spirit. Father, Son, and Spirit. That Saul represents God getting mad. And the Son, Jesus, is Jonathan trying to help David. God's not having anything to do with it. Had enough. Throwing javelins at his own son. And this is actually how Luciferians have tricked your pastors, your pastor's pastor, or your pastor's pastor's pastor. Hey, see that? David's the devil. He's God's buddy. That's Jesus and the devil. They're the same guy. No. You have to know where you are in time. This right here, the Watchmen. Read the Song of Songs. What did the Watchmen do? They stripped away her veil. They found her, beat her up, took away her veil. Who is she? Who's the veiled one? Exposed the devil. Who's a watchman? I am. I ripped the veil right off hydrogen. I called it right out. Exposed it to the world. Didn't care what the church thought. Don't care. Let's all talk. Let's all sit down and talk, because I want you to prove to me that Jesus is the devil. I need you to do that, because I ain't buying it. And when Saul threw that javelin at Jonathan, because Jonathan was helping David, you have to know the breakdown of who those people represent. Because these Satanists are saying, see that? God's over here, but Jesus and David and Jonathan, they're all kind of very veiled. No, bro. There was the relationship that God had with hydrogen before the fall. And a lot of people are confusing those times with today. That happens. But there's also what I talked about in an earlier video, where you have to know who these biblical characters are, and the very fine breakdown, or these Luciferians will creep in and convince you, see that? That's proof that Jesus is the devil, cleverly disguised. You say, oh, no, you don't. Those proud waves end right here on this beach. I told you about Koch's snowflake. And how these mathematical patterns can go on forever and ever and ever. That's how sand works. That's why sand is so effective. You got all these tiny little grains, like sandbags, impacting all the bullets. You got to be like that beach. Here thy proud waves stay. When those Luciferian Satanists come up with all their bullshit, you got to go like this. Not today, bro. Hit me. Superman. Right here. Sands of time right here, bro. You're looking for hard-headed granite? No. That's the strong force, the electromagnetic force, and gravity. I'm the weak force. Little tiny grain of sand. Lot of them. Wisdom takes a long time. And I used to be that granite, trying to stick my chest out and getting smashed. Just like, what's his name? Hercules fought that dude, and dude was picking him up and throwing. He was picking the guy up and throwing him, and every time he hit the ground, his mother was Gaia, the earth. So he got stronger. So Hercules realized if I hold him above my head, he'll get weaker. And that's what eventually happens, but in reverse. You begin to get really good with the weak force the older you get, because you have a life. You have a story. You have something to offer the world. You have a way to poke the devil in the eye at your level. Quit looking for Donald Trump's weapons of war. Use what you've been given. I wasn't given nothing. Then use nothing. Air coming out of your lungs. Speak. Have a life to give. Have a message. Remember the tequila commercial with, what's his name? Kiefer Sutherland? Advertising and Kiefer was known for partying hardy. He had the tequila and he's like, have a life. Have a story. Smoke a cigar. Do something. He's right. So back in those days, when you reverse engineer, hey, where did everything go flying off the tracks? When I was involved in the church, going through theological training, there was an old minister, won't get into his name, but one of his favorite sayings, and I loved it, he said, when I got into the church, that is the time where things flipped. And the church went worldly and the world went churchy. And I used to laugh. And he goes, it was a sad time. He said, before the church was, they had rules, very strict rules. Women wore a skirt down below their knee, no cleavage. And the men wore long sleeves, no short sleeves. None of this V-neck with the hair sticking out and a gold chain, nah. Men dressed like men and women dressed like women, and they covered up. Filthy language was not allowed. It was about raising children to be good citizens. And that all changed between the 50s and the 60s. And he said the church went worldly and the world became churchy. The church ended up losing its edge. It lost a sense of itself. The science of the Bible was pushed aside for this moral system that we have that does not work. They place all this importance on getting to the altar and marrying, and then they dump you there. And they hand you off to the government, who have their own ideas on what a marriage should be. And the church doesn't say boo. These people calling me Gnostics, their church allowed that. They're mad at me. They ought to be mad at their church for allowing all the schools to bully them. And it all happened during that, was it Stokes monkey trial? Monkey shines, where they say, oh yeah, we came from monkeys. No, you didn't. Monkeys came from us. Our DNA is the map for all biological life. Read the book. But these early Christians didn't have a scientific mind to stand on. I like this scripture right here. 2 Peter 3:16. That is one of my 3:16s in the Bible. We always talk about John 3:16. That's how you come to the knowledge of Christ, the need for salvation. This one deals with people in the church running their mouths, not having a knowledge of what their Bible actually says. They have no concept of what the book is actually saying. They're leaving that open. I can leave that to the minister. I don't understand it. But as soon as somebody says something, they're like, oh, you're a Gnostic. They're tossing some catchphrase out. Please. I forgot more about the Bible than most people will ever learn. Yeah, that's why I got away from it. Like I said about Sam Shamoon. I love Sam. God bless Sam. He's a great man. He's doing great things. Probably greater things than I'll ever do. But you got to watch out when you get too big for your britches and you start flipping off these scriptures and you know a lot about the Bible. The science of the Bible is very important. And your Christian ministers don't want you to learn the science of the Bible. That's why they allowed the government to take over marriage. They handed off the Institute of Marriage, and today they're like, oh, why is it a mess? Gee, I cannot figure out why that would be an issue today. Probably because the church created the concept and you allowed the government to step in and say, oh, this is our idea again. Just like you did with the concept of, hey, is hydrogen really the one or is it the zero? We allow Elon Musk on the Joe Rogan show, episode 1470, 1470, 39 minutes, 22 seconds into the conversation. Did Elon mean this? Don't know. You'd have to ask the man. I like Elon. I think he's doing fantastic things. Not a hater. But sometimes we speak things as fact, and you can't back that up. And he said something very critical that I have a hair across my ass over because it's right out of the Luciferian playbook. Oh, hydrogen is the number one element. Everybody knows that. Hold on a sec. That happened back when the church leaders had no say because they didn't know enough to say anything. Back in the 1800s, 1900s, yeah. Reverse engineer where things went south, where the church went worldly and the world went churchy. Mr. Hey, you're a Gnostic. You're like Job, you're giving the daughters an inheritance among the sons. Everyone knows you're not supposed to do that. It's supposed to be patriarchy, patriarchy, patriarchy. Oh, you say Hinduism's a good thing? No, I say be a Christian, know the Bible like the back of your hand, and then all the stuff that's in these other religions, I'm not saying that's how you come to the knowledge of God. The only way to Christ is through Christianity, which came from Judaism. But once you do that, you can look at these and have no fear. I remember the first time I saw a Hindu temple, I didn't know what to think. All these creatures, they were carving them as they were putting the building up. And the guy from India, this was here in Massachusetts, Ashland, there's a temple over there. They were making that temple. And I was amazed. I'm like, look at these artists. He's making these very intricate cement carvings outside. And I felt stupid because I'm like, I don't know what any of these characters are. They're the same people that are found in your Bible, dummy. You say, oh no, those are satanic images. Well, Satan's found in the Bible. Come on, guy. The same devil over here is the devil over there. They understand things actually at a higher degree than you Christians do. I stopped losing my fear when I started studying these things, and I'm like, okay, I can actually explain this to people now. My children, my grandchildren don't have to be scared of Hindu temples. I tell them, go watch what Praveen Mohan teaches. He's excellent. He's not trying to convert you to Hinduism. He's never once said, hey, join my temple. Hey, I need a donation. I hope someday I can hang out with that guy. Very knowledgeable. And that system intertwines with Christianity and Judaism perfectly. And it's another level to understand your own beliefs. And people are like, oh, you can't study those things. You're an imbecile. You're a simpleton. You're a simp. Read 2 Peter 3:16, kid. That is how Paul got so smart. How Joseph got so smart. They were Jews to the highest degree. Hebrews of the Hebrews. Immersed in their scripture. And they objectively studied all these other beliefs and realized the commonality. And those people from those countries treated them better than their own families. Wake up. The chink in the armor of the left. The Holy Grail that is leaking out of the internet now, and I've had enough. People like, they've been on Joe Rogan and Sean Ryan, both great platforms. Joe gives people and Sean gives people a chance to speak their piece objectively. They're very patient and they listen. And they say, well, you know, that Jesus character is a lot like that Lucifer character. Stop. Lock them up. Lock it down. Dog it. Time out. Hold the pull. You're wrong. And if you understand 2 Peter 3:16, and you have a life, and you understand the periodic table and the four forces and the zodiac. Oh, the zodiac, you're into mysticism. No. That's who, if you read the book of Job, Mazzaroth, that was the Hebrew zodiac. That's who Mazzaroth is. It's the original clock when they used symbols instead of numbers. Oh, you're a Gnostic because you talk about the zodiac. The zodiac's in the Bible. Don't be a simp. That's astronomy. That's a science. It involves telescopes and math. And yes, it's all throughout the Bible. And they stole that system and called it Cartesian coordinates. The Ephraim and Manasseh, Rachel and Leah, that today we call positive X, negative X, or alpha, beta. Yeah, they're calling that positive X, negative X. It existed before. And nobody contested when they took it and said, oh, this is who did it, and that's part of the college system. That didn't come from the Bible. No, it came from the Bible first. Teach your students the truth. Stop lying. Ivy League college, liars, usurpers. That is what you're doing. And by the way, all the alphabets of all the languages and all the nations came from the holy books. Gutenberg, first book they pressed when they figured out how to make metal reverse image numbers and letters using tin and antimony, because they realized other metals would expand. So they figured out how to pour metal into a mold where it would be consistent. There was a lot behind that process. The book that brought the breath of life to these people that are the biggest haters of the book are stealing your beliefs. The church went worldly and the world went churchy. And the colleges were like, ha ha, stealing your whole birthright. Taking credit for marriage. Laughing that your church just dumps you on their doorstep. All men getting screwed. Good fathers getting screwed over. Instead of having the 5 or 6 or 10 kids they should be, putting all their eggs into one basket. So now there's no more big families. Why? Guys don't want to go through that because they get screwed in court. Because the church gave up their birthright, like Esau. And Jacob was like, thanks, sucker. The leftists poured into the halls of academia, what I call hackademia, acting as school monitors and hall monitors to what gets said and comes out of those schools of thought. They're controlling your thinking and your speaking. You say, I have First Amendment rights. You gave them up a long time ago, sucker. Jacob stole them. Your First Amendment. Please. You're scared to say something because your church people will go, we don't want you in our church anymore. Good. I don't want to be here anyway. I'm too big for these britches. I need a bigger pot. I'm root bound. You hate me? That means you never loved me. I got enough God to stand on my own. Don't need yours. When you have that mindset, you're going to go out and get stuff done, and they hate you for it. They don't like that. Ask anyone who's successful. As soon as success comes, everyone gets mad. What happened? Today we talk about Tataria. If you look up in the scriptures, Tartarus is mentioned in the book of Jude. Jude talks about the angels that left their first estate. God imprisoned them in chains of darkness. And the Greeks have a word for this, a term, it's called Tartarus, or Tartus, Tartarus. And that's Tataria. And like I say, there's layers to that onion. We call things, oh, that was the Stone Age. Technically, all the way up to the Iron Age, where they started building skyscrapers. They went vertical with glass and steel. That was all the Stone Age. You're like, oh, no, that was back when dinosaurs were around. No. Think about all the buildings in the world. They call it the mud flood, and what happened? The world went churchy, the church went worldly. This fatal funnel, this pinch point, the funnel of uncertainty, the 1800s, where the lights began to turn on in the scientific community. Hey, wait a minute. The Bible and science go hand in hand. Electricity and radioactive salts, they started, Madame Curie messing with the radium salts, ended up getting sick from it. Madame Curie and her husband. And then they started messing with nuclear power and all, making bombs. Mathematics started advancing. Math started exploding. They started finding a need for a number representation for imagination. How do we create something that represents the imagination? Euler said, use an I, plug it in. Square root of -1. That doesn't exist. It's just a figurehead. It's a figure of speech. It's a metaphor. So these people that say, oh, the Bible, that's all hogwash. They're the same ones who don't understand Euler did the same exact thing. You're making excuses for Euler, but you're holding the people of the Bible to this high, exalted state of, it has to be, this held to this high degree standard. You're not holding your mathematicians to that. That's what they did when they came up with I. And you could shoot holes all through everything. Every course of study there is. You can blast people who are very advanced in those courses of study know where all the anomalies, they know where the little secrets are hidden. Those little Easter eggs that they don't ever want you to know about. Just like these archaeologists, they're part of that hall monitor system that, oh, look, you found this object on the layer that's 10 million years old. Oh, gotta hide that. Oh, they don't do that. Yes, they do. Don't believe me? Good. Prove me wrong and open up the basement to the Vatican vaults and also the Smithsonian. I dare you. You can't, because they're going to pull out all stuff and you're going to go, holy mackerel. Where was this found? The what layer? You found that in the what layer? No, it can't be. Yeah, it can. A couple of scripture references. One is Song of Songs 1:7 and Song of Songs 5:7. That's the removing of the veil. Who is that narrator in Song of Solomon? Part of it is when Jesus gave up the ghost. Whether it's metaphorical or it actually happened, the veil between the holy place and the Holy of Holies was ripped. A lot of you Jewish theologians will tell you it wasn't a physical tearing. Christian theologians, they disagree. They say, oh no, that is a bone of contention, that it did rip. Bottom line is, the veil between us not knowing the concepts of God, it goes back to when Ham made fun of his drunk father, Noah, after the flood. And the two brothers came in and walked backwards and covered their father. And by the way, that walking backwards, one walked in and saw his nakedness and the others walked backwards and covered the nakedness. That has to do with the spins of planets. Why Venus is a reverse rotator and why Earth rotates one way and Venus the other. That's what that's talking about. That's another layer to that onion. But the veil between God and man was removed, and you can come to God. You don't need to sacrifice the animals. You don't need to. Israel don't need to rebuild the temple. They're going to do it no matter what I tell them. I just gave you Solomon's temple in the periodic table. They're going to have to find that out for themselves. People are stiff-necked, hard-head people, and you cannot convince them, hey guys, this is totally unnecessary. They're going to learn when the Antichrist or Antichrist comes in. Right now, they're pursuing for peace in the Middle East. 3.5 years of peace gets broken by the Great Tribulation. And they surround Israel. And the people in Israel surrender. What does that tell you? They're like, we've had enough of this. And the Satanists come into the temple that gets rebuilt, where the Dome of the Rock is. And I always figured that would get hit by a missile from their enemies and blown off the face of the earth. And that's going to allow Israel to say, hey, you guys blew up your own holy place. So if Allah is God, how do you explain that? And they're just going to jump right in there and rebuild that temple. That is a good description of what could possibly be right around the corner. And then that temple gets defiled by the beast, the Antichrist. He comes in and he sacrifices a pig in the holy place, Holy of Holies, to defile it. And all the faithful believers in Israel are forced out into what's called Petra. And their eyes are opened. They say what everybody says. God, what are we doing wrong? We're your people. How did it get to this? And their eyes open up and they realize, oh, we could have had a V8. And what happens next? That is what we call the second coming of Jesus. He comes back like the Jews wanted him to in the first place, as a military dictator. He comes down on the Mount of Olives where he ascended up. The mountain splits in two. The Antichrist armies are amassing on horseback to kill these last remaining. They're hardcore Jews. They're the ones that are really, they're like the American Amish. Okay, they're the hardcore ones. They're not the ones playing church. They're not the church that went worldly and the world that went churchy. These are the real McCoys. And they're in this one little place out in this Nowhereville. And this group of people who just defiled the temple are like, we're going to squash them like a bug. And God goes, no, you're not. Jim Dandy to the rescue. There comes that weak force. I warned you. You're trying to use EMF, strong force gravity? You think you're going to plant these people? No, those are God's people. These ain't the people playing God's people. These are really God's people. These are the ones Hitler messed with and realized, man, I effed up. Yes, you did. Hitler, you read John Toland's book on Adolf Hitler. One of the things he said, yeah, I read the Bible. I had no use for it. Look what what went through his head before that 9mm. They say he didn't kill himself with a gun. He had to because he ate the cyanide and it didn't work. So he put the bullet in his head. Before that bullet, 9mm, went through his head, what's the thoughts that went through Hitler's head? Do you know? Same ones that go through everybody. Believe it or not, very similar to the ones the Jews when they go out to Petra. How did I get here? I just set out to do good. How did all this befall me? I was only trying to help. You see how no matter where you are on either side, God ain't playing with you. You're in the middle, bro. And Hitler said, yeah, I got no use for that Bible. Well, the first thing you learn in the Bible is do not touch God's chosen. Anything God says, this is my peeps. Don't mess with it. You mess with the Amish? Don't do that. And there's other societies around the world where, watch out. These are real people. There's a battle in Japan where the Chinese were wiped out. It's a very well-known a storm raged in the ocean and wiped out all these ships full of people. What do you think all them people in the Shinto temples were doing, them women? They were praying a hole through the sky. And the weak force came to the rescue. Doesn't always happen. Not always going to happen. That's why people don't believe in God. They're like, well, it doesn't work every time. Yeah, God's not at your beck and call, dum-dum. Have some gum-gum. Yeah, God's not your little servant. But when your enemies come in from all sides thinking, we got them now, that's when it counts. That's when God turns you into a Billy Waugh, a Bruce Springsteen, a Robbie Krieger, somebody who becomes aware, like the Jews in that predicament. The lights turn on. And all of a sudden, we're in a whole new era. And God's running things from Israel. Ain't no playing around. God comes back as a military dictator. And he ain't playing around. And if you don't get along today, and you're not having fun today, you ain't going to like it then. That's like all of a sudden we're all allowed to be free and wild and everything. And now we're held to standards. People ain't going to like that. And it says that anyone who rises up against that system, God wipes them completely out. Their flag never flies again. It's what we call the United Nations. Yeah, just pull that guy's flag. That nation's gone. Where are they? They're done. They're done as a nation. Abomination. Remember we talked about that in an earlier video? Why you can't put the Jews and the Egyptians together? E- Egyptians. What are the Jews? Well, if they're not E-, they have to be either positron right? Positron annihilates an electron or a proton. There's something that's opposite, or a neutron. That's the science of the Bible, guys. So Egypt is E minus, which is the electron. Yep. Temple of Set. SEX. Jesus' cross turned sideways. That's a multiplication sign. Time times in the dividing of times. That's the actual science of your book. When you open it up and you stop listening to the dumb people who want you polishing up church pew with your ass, ignorant. Yes, it is important to reach people with the gospel. Yes, it is important to let them know you got to go through Jesus right now. But the day's coming where all salvation comes through Israel. That day is coming to an end. Christianity's days are numbered. Do you think Christians are going to go willingly? No. Who do you think is going to cause a lot of issues? Guys, it's going to be the Christians. They have the most to lose. Wake up. The people today who are saying, hey, you're our buddy. Not your buddy. A lot of them are going to get the wires crossed. They're not going to know that. They're not going to have presence of mind. Spatial relations. They're going to get you in a lot of trouble. They're not watchmen. They don't know the times, and the dividing of times. They don't know the science of their own book. They're teaching you fairy tales, and they handed you off to the government as a sheeple. You never question them. You're scared. That's why I'm not afraid. When Elon makes a statement, oh yeah, when hydrogen became sentient. Wait a minute, back up, Elon. If I was on the show that day, I would say, Elon, prove that. Oh, what do you mean prove it? That's common knowledge. Really, it is? That hydrogen existed before carbon? You can't prove any of that. I'm like, who was it, Steven Crowder says? Prove me wrong. I want to hear your argument. I want your thesis. I want the mathematical proofs and everything. Because according to the only record we have of the Big Bang or anything close to a Big Bang is the Bible. Or the Vedas or whatever, as long as you know how to read them. It's all in there. The Numa Elish, the Nordic tales, they're all there. Saying the same things, different ways. Repackaging it. Today, Hollywood's selling it to you in wholesale and you don't even realize. Right over your head. Neo is neodymium? Yeah. Jesus in the underworld. Hello. Well at Behurum. That's barium. Reuben is rubidium. Anyway, when they make these statements, I have steam coming out of my ears and I go, wait a minute. Back it up. Prove what you just said. Because that is what the Luciferians say. Oh, nothing to see here, folks. Hydrogen's the number one element. Prove it. Because according to that book, and I'm not going to open to the chapter and verse where the guy says, hey, man, that hydrogen thing is not quite the way it's being presented. Really? Or as Jim Carrey used to say, really? So, the rabbit hole, the plot thickens. Let's talk about this. Oh, no, there's nothing to see here, folks. It's definitely the one. Really? The Neo? Funny how they don't want you to see that. And I realized one day, I went, I know how to get him. Polyphemus, I know how to go right in his big eye. I see the chink in his armor. They can't prove that. And I bet they ain't got the balls to meet me on a public platform where I have Christians who pull their heads out of their rear end and say, hey, I like where you're going with this. I've never heard this from the church before. No, you didn't. Because your church ponied up right from the beginning back in the 1800s. They're like, oh, sounds good to us. You guys are the Ivy League schools. You must know what you're talking about. Despite the fact that they were pagans from the old world. The end of Tartaria, the Stone Age, turning into the modern age. Today we are in, when I grew up, they called it the space age. Okay? Today we live in the information age. Funny how it comes to the eye again, doesn't it? Big eye. Where do you think those people get that? We identify with the eye because we are the knowledge. No, you're not. You're the liars who took things and claimed that, we figured this out. No, you didn't. Liar. And when someone calls you out, you go, now I got to do my job. First they ignore you. Then they mock you. Then they attack you. And then they realize, this guy ain't going anywhere. No, because I'm sand, bro. You've already taken everything from me. I got nothing to lose. What are you going to do? Been through enough hardship in life, man. The only kryptonite exists in here, and I don't allow that. I push that shit down. I don't suppress it. I look at it for what it is. You bring out any flaw on me, and I'll deal with it in public. I don't care. I got no shame. No shame in my game, bro. Call out one of my flaws. They used to do it at work when I did line work, power lines. Most brutal crews you'll ever be on, especially when you're the apprentice. And they all laugh because I tell you, you want to know something? I will tell you. Like what's his name? Theo Vaughn. He got no shame in his game. I'm the same way. That's when I started picking up these books. It's when I started studying advanced math and understanding the concept, the language, backtracking, the timeline of science, and realizing, wow, there was a turning point where the church just rolled over for these schools. Yep, your church sold you out. Took that chain and that shackle and clicked it right around your neck, clicked it around your ankle, and said, shh, you're free. No, you're not. They shackled your brain. They don't teach you that the science of the Bible is very accurate when you know what it's talking about. And the seed corn, the very beginning of all things is, hey, who's this 369 relationship? How does this all work? This way, this way. Orion's buttons and Orion's belt. Very interesting. Very humble beginnings. And everyone's like, oh, it's this advanced stuff, man. Nope. Reverse engineer, guys. Take it back to the seed corn. Before the seed got planted in the dirt, just look at it and go, there's nothing here. It's the weak force. Look at that. It's a seed. What's it become? Wow. That's a stalk of corn. That's amazing. You got that from that little thing? No. Say it ain't so. Yeah. Came out of this little thing right here. It's called a seed. You're looking for the corn and the corn on the cob. The pot with the water boiling, the butter. God gives you the seed. There you go, boy. Off you go. Go slay the devil. Go kill the devil at your level. We're out of the Tartaria and the mud people. Again, just like in the movie The Matrix, where the guy with all the TVs in the room there, whatever his name is, tells Neo, we killed Zion 1,000 times already. That Tartaria and Tartarus, that comes up over and over and over again. Getting out of the Stone Age. Get your head out of the Stone Age, bro. You're living in the past. Like I wear Jesus on a cross. That ain't Jesus, bro. That's Satan. Wake up. Jesus is alive. He ain't dead on that cross. That was 6 hours of his life. You're gonna worship 6 hours of a 33-year life? Come on, man. The Satanists are laughing at you. Hey, we got him wearing crosses. Not me. This is the only cross I got right here. Is a dude climbing a pole. Reminds me I have a life. I have war stories. I can bounce my kid's kid on my knee, look him in the eye and say, Grandpappy's a good dude. I don't care what my enemies say. Don't believe him. And he won't. He'll be like, I won't believe them liars, Pappy. He's going to be a good kid. It's me and him and God versus all y'all. Ha! I got that from a famous Army Ranger, by the way. He ended everything by going, ha! Everybody who's an Army Ranger from the 1980s knows that guy's name. He attacked Grenada, used the bulldozer. You saw it in Clint Eastwood's Heartbreak Ridge. He's the guy that actually did that. He's a good man. Jude 1:6 talks about the angels that left their first estate. One of the things I like to say in closing, I'm attacking your beliefs. Do you know why? I got tired of you attacking mine. Don't ever forget that. This is Rambo. Rambo said it right. You drew first blood. Mister, you know who you are. You were on Joe Rogan saying, hey, you know, that Lucifer and Jesus, they're probably the same guy, cleverly disguised. That's when I said, I've had enough of this shit. I knew exactly what to do right from that point on. I said, oh yeah, I'm going to get this one. I'm going to nip this one right in the bud. And that's why I'm here. And the church hates me just as much as the Satanists hate me. Because now they've both got to do their jobs. Get off their ass and go out and prove me wrong. I always use the analogy. I'm Martin Luther banging that thesis on the wall of Wittenberg Castle. That's what we're doing here. So I'm going to close it down. And thank you for tuning in. Remind you to like, subscribe, check out the link tree, and check us out on Shopify.